Hey guys, tonight we are going to walk side by side with one of history's most audacious generals and his incredible, trumpeting, secret weapons. You're going to smell the dust of the road, feel the biting wind of the mountains, and hear the rumble of 37 pairs of gigantic, padded feet. We are marching with Hannibal and his war elephants straight over the Alps. Now, it's only fair to warn you, your chances of actually surviving this little adventure are, historically speaking, abysmal. Most of the people who started this journey ended up as frozen statues in a mountain pass or on the wrong end of a Roman sword. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel more than you know. And for a bit of fun, post your location and what time it is, where you are in the comments. I love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your story begins not in the biting snow of the mountains, but in the humid, salt-laced air of a thriving metropolis. You are in Carthage, a jewel on the North African coast, around the year 237 BC. The city hums with a power that feels both ancient and anxious. It's a place of incredible wealth, built on maritime trade that reaches every known corner of the world. The scent of cedar wood from Lebanon, spices from the east, and tons of drying fish hang in the air. You can hear a dozen languages in the marketplace, a chaotic symphony of commerce. But beneath the vibrant surface, there's a deep, collective bitterness. Carthage has recently lost a war, the First Punic War, to an arrogante, land-based power across the sea. Rome. The defeat was costly, humiliating, and nobody has forgotten it. Think of it as the most toxic corporate rivalry you can imagine. But instead of hostile takeovers, they used legions and warships. You find yourself in the service of the Barca family, a clan of patriots and brilliant military leaders, the head of the house. Hannibal Barca is a living legend. He's the general who fought the Romans to a standstill in Sicily, a lion of a man who feels the sting of his nation's surrender as a personal wound. Today is a significant day. Hamilcar is preparing to depart for Spain, a land rich in silver and, more importantly, a land where he can rebuild Carthaginian strength far from the prying eyes of Roman diplomats. He's taking his armies, his ambitions, and his family. A great ceremony is underway at the Temple of Baal-Haman, the city's chief deity. As you move through the shadows of the Grand Temple, the air grows thick with the smoke of sacrificial fires and heavy incense. The flicker of oil lamps casts long, dancing shadows on stone walls carved with grim-faced gods. Hamilcar is there, a powerful presence before the altar, making his offerings and praying for success. And then you see the boy. He's only 9 years old. This is Hannibal. He isn't a large child, but his eyes burn with an intensity that seems unnatural for his age. He tugs on his father's robes, insisting that he be allowed to go to Spain to be part of the great adventure. Most fathers might laugh, promising to bring back a souvenir, but Hamilcar sees the same fire in his son that burns in his own soul. He agrees, but on one solemn condition. He leads little Hannibal to the stone altar, where the remains of the animal sacrifice are still warm. He instructs the boy to place his small hand upon the offering. You watch, holding your breath, as the great general's voice, low and resonant, fills the sacred space. He makes the 9-year-old swear a vow. Most 9-year-olds swear eternal vengeance on vegetables, not global superpowers. But Hannibal's voice, though high-pitched, is firm. He swears that for as long as he lives, he will never be a friend to Rome. The words hang in the air, a promise that'll shape the destiny of millions. Historians still argue whether the story of the oath is a literal truth or a masterful piece of Roman propaganda, crafted later to cast Hannibal as a monomaniacal villain from birth. But standing here in the shadows, you believe it. You also know about the darker whispers surrounding Carthage's gods, rumors of desperate sacrifices that Rome would later use to paint them as monsters. For now, though, all you see is a father and a son, bound by a shared purpose and a truly terrifying promise. The ceremony concludes, and as they walk out of the temple and into the light of the African sun, you feel a profound shift in the world. A boy's promise, made in fire and faith, has just set history on a new and very bloody course. The journey across the sea is a blur of creaking timber, salty spray, and the nervous energy of thousands of soldiers crammed onto transport ships. You land in Spain, Iberia. They call it Tande. The difference from Carthage is immediate. The air is drier, the sun more relentless, and the land feels wilder, less tamed. This is not a place of ancient, wealthy merchants. It is a frontier, rich with silver mines, dense forests, and fierce Celtic and Iberian tribes who are not exactly thrilled to see you. For the next several years, this rugged peninsula becomes your world, and it is here that you get to watch the boy, Hannibal, transform. He doesn't spend his time in comfortable villas. His classroom is the training ground. His teachers are grizzled mercenaries, and his father, Hamilcar, is the toughest professor of them all. You see him learning to ride with the Numidian cavalry, their small, wiry horses seeming to float over the rocky terrain. He learns to fight with the heavy, curved Iberian sword, the falcata, a weapon brutally effective at chopping and slashing. He doesn't just learn the theory of war, he lives its reality. When you are huddled under a thin wool cloak during a cold mountain night, shivering, you see him doing the same a few feet away, refusing a better blanket. When the rations are thin, a bit of hard bread and some dried meat, he is eating the exact same meal. There's a popular story that you see for yourself is true. He purposefully sleeps on the hard, stony ground to toughen his body, a practice that seems insane until you see the respect it earns him from the lowest-ranking soldiers. The promise he made in the temple isn't something he talks about, but you can see it in his eyes. It's the fuel for this relentless self-improvement. His father, Hamilcar, is a force of nature, expanding Carthaginian influence through a masterful mix of brute force and shrewd diplomacy. But the frontier is a dangerous place. One day, during a campaign, disaster strikes. An enemy ambush, a chaotic swirl of steel and shouting, and Hamilcar is gone, falling in battle while securing the retreat of his sons. The shock ripples through the army. In the power vacuum, command passes to Hannibal's brother-in-law, a man known as Hasdrubal the Fair. Hasdrubal is a different kind of leader, more of a politician than a general. He prefers treaties to battles and consolidates Carthaginian power by founding a magnificent new capital. Carthage, what the Romans will one day call New Carthage. It becomes a stunning port city, a beacon of Punic power in a foreign land. Under Hasdrubal, Hannibal becomes the cavalry commander, the sharp point of the spear. Now a young man in his early 20s, he is his father's son in every way that matters on the battlefield. You witness him leading charges that seem suicidal, only to see him turn a collapsing flank into a decisive victory. His ability to read the flow of a battle is uncanny, almost supernatural. The men, who already respected the boy for his grit, now begin to idolize the commander for his genius and his habit of being the first to charge and the last to retreat. This period of diplomacy under Hasdrubal, however, is just a tense pause. Everyone knows it. You can feel it in the air. The peace is ended by the thrust of an assassin's knife. Hasdrubal the Fair is murdered by a vengeful Celt, and suddenly, the army is without a leader. There is no waiting for the politicians back in Carthage to send some powdered nobleman to take over. The decision is made right here, in the dust and sweat of a Spanish army camp. The soldiers themselves, the men you drill with and share your wine with, begin to chant his name, Hannibal. It starts as a murmur among the veterans who knew his father, and it swells into a roar that shakes the tents. They hoist him on their shoulders. A spontaneous, heartfelt military election. It's the most unconventional promotion you've ever seen, and probably the most honest. At just 26 years old, you now answer to General Hannibal Barca. Historians still argue whether Hannibal's Spain was a personal kingdom of the Barca family or a true extension of Carthage. But for you on the ground, the distinction is meaningless. You don't serve Carthage, you serve Hannibal, and he immediately begins to prepare you for the task he has been planning his entire life. He knows the vow made at the altar was not just a boy's whisper. It was the quiet creed of an army waiting to be born. The roar of the army that lifted Hannibal onto their shoulders still echoes in your ears as you break camp. You are now part of a finely tuned instrument of war, and its new master is wasting no time. Before you can challenge Rome, you must completely secure your own backyard. So, for the next 2 years, you march. You are part of a relentless campaign to bring all of Iberia south of the Ebro River under Carthaginian control. You clash with the Alcaides, a fierce tribe, and sack their capital. You push further into the lands of the Vacae, a people known for their warrior spirit. The fighting is hard, a brutal education in the realities of pacifying a hostile land. But with every victory, the army grows stronger, more confident, and wealthier. Hannibal is a genius at logistics. He makes sure the campaigns pay for themselves in plunder and slaves. And he makes sure you, the common soldier, get your share. It's a simple but effective way to ensure loyalty. Make war profitable. Your attention, and the army's, is soon drawn to a city on the coast, Saguntum. It's a prosperous port, technically south of the Ebro River, and therefore in Carthage's sphere of influence, according to the treaty Hasdrubal made. But there's a complication, a deliberate tripwire left by Rome. Saguntum has a formal alliance with the Roman Republic. It's a Roman foothold in your territory, a strategic thorn in your side, and you soon realize that for Hannibal, this thorn is not an obstacle, but an opportunity. It is the perfect excuse. He can't just march on Rome out of the blue. That would make him the clear aggressor. But if he can provoke Rome into declaring war, that changes everything. The pretext is almost insultingly flimsy. Hannibal claims that the Saguntines are oppressing a neighboring tribe, a tribe that just so happens to be under his protection. It's the ancient world's equivalent of a playground argument, but with tens of thousands of soldiers ready to back it up. Before anyone can protest, your army is on the march, and soon you stand before the high, sturdy walls of Saguntum. The siege begins. For 8 long months, it is your entire world. You spend your days building massive siege towers, hulking wooden beasts that creaked and groaned as they're pushed toward the walls. You work in teams, operating the ballistic giant crossbows that fire heavy bolts with enough force to shatter stone and men. The air is filled with the constant thud of projectiles, the splintering of wood, and the defiant shouts from the defenders. Hannibal is everywhere. He is not a general who commands from a silk tent miles away. You see him in the forward trenches, squinting at the walls, devising new ways to break them. You see him urging on the engineers, and on one terrifying afternoon, you see him go down. A javelin, thrown from the ramparts, catches him in the thigh. A wave of panic ripples through the lines, but his officers form a shield wall around him and carry him back to the surgeons. His injury only seems to harden his resolve, and yours. You feel a personal anger now. They hurt your general. The Saguntines fight with the courage of desperation. They know what will happen if the city falls, and they hold on to the hope that their powerful Roman allies will come and save them. That hope materializes one day, not as an army, but as a pair of stern-faced Roman senators who march into your camp under a flag of truce. You watch as they are brought before Hannibal, who receives them not with deference, but with a cool, almost bored arrogance. They demand he cease his attack on their ally. Hannibal essentially laughs them off, listing his own grievances and telling them to take their complaints to the Senate back in Carthage, knowing full well that by the time they do, the city will be his. It's a masterful piece of political theater. He is deliberately, painstakingly, picking a fight with the most powerful nation in the world. Historians still argue whether Rome's alliance with Saguntum was a genuine defensive pact or a cynical move designed to provoke a conflict with ambitious young general they saw rising in Spain. But from your perspective, it doesn't matter who lit the fuse. Hannibal is the one holding the torch, and he is about to touch it to the powder keg. Finally, after months of bloody attrition, your forces breach the walls. The city falls in a storm of violence and fire. The war you have been preparing for, the war that was sworn into existence by a 9-year-old boy at an altar, has now officially begun. The ashes of Saguntum are barely cold when the true scope of Hannibal's plan begins to ripple through the camp. You've been celebrating, nursing your wounds, and likely enjoying the spoils of a hard-fought victory. You assume the next move will be to consolidate power in Spain, maybe build a fleet. But Hannibal is not a man who thinks in conventional terms. He summons the army, tens of thousands of you, into a vast, natural amphitheater. He stands on a rocky outcrop, and when he speaks, his voice carries a chilling certainty. He tells you that the war against Rome will not be fought here in Spain. It will not be fought on the islands of Sicily or Sardinia. It will be fought in their backyard, on the plains of Italy. A stunned silence falls over the massive crowd. Italy. How? The Romans control the seas. Sailing there would be a suicide mission, inviting the mighty Roman navy to pick you off one transport ship at a time. Then he tells you the rest of the plan. You aren't going to sail. You are going to march. A low murmur spreads through the ranks. You look at the men around you, a hardened Iberian warrior with intricate tattoos. A wiry Numidian horseman who seems more comfortable on his mount than on his own 2 feet. A sling-wielding Balearic islander whose eyes are always scanning the horizon. You're a motley collection of professionals, mercenaries from a dozen different lands, all bound together by loyalty to this one man. But the plan sounds like madness. It's less of a strategic plan and more of a dare against the gods. To get to Italy, you must first cross the Pyrenees, the formidable mountain range that separates Spain from Gaul. Then you must traverse the entire width of southern Gaul, a land filled with hostile, unpredictable tribes. And then you must face the real barrier, a wall of rock and ice so high it seems to hold up the sky. The Alps. No army of this size has ever done it, and certainly no army has ever done it with elephants. Ah, the elephants. Until now, they've been a terrifying but manageable part of the army. You've seen them used in Spain to break enemy lines. Their sheer mass and terrifying trumpeting charges enough to send even veteran soldiers running. Now, you look at the 37 of them, munching contentedly on immense piles of foliage, and you can't help but wonder. They are living, breathing siege engines, walking mountains of muscle and bone. This is the quirky tidbit you've learned firsthand. They are almost certainly the smaller, now extinct North African forest elephant, not the colossal Indian elephants you hear about in stories from the East. Still, smaller is a relative term. They are a uche, and they eat constantly. A fact that will become profoundly unfunny later. Hannibal, sensing the doubt, is a master of motivation. He reminds you of Roman arrogance, of the riches waiting in Italy. He paints a picture of victory so compelling that the sheer insanity of the journey begins to feel like a necessary price. He's also a pragmatist. He gives a significant portion of his troops, over 10,000 men, leave to go home and defend their new territories in Spain. It's a clever move that both secures his base and weeds out anyone who isn't fully committed to the lunacy ahead. The rest of you, the core of the fighting force, are now on the move. Historians still argue over the exact numbers that left Spain to ancient sources themselves disagree. Polybius suggests around 50,000 infantry and 9,000 cavalry, while others give higher figures, looking at the column of men, horses, mules, and elephants stretching 4 miles behind and in front of you. All you know is that it feels like the entire world is on the march. The journey north to the Pyrenees is the easy part, a dusty but straightforward trek. But as the foothills rise up to meet you, the mood changes. The ground becomes steep and unforgiving. The paths narrow. This is your first taste of what's to come. You fight your way through the mountain passes, clashing with local tribes who resist your passage with fierce guerrilla tactics. It's a bloody and exhausting struggle, a war just to get to the war. By the time you descend into Gaul, your numbers are already thinned, and your illusions are shattered. This journey will not be a simple walk. It is a filter designed to let only the hardest, the luckiest, and the most determined survive. As you look back at the peaks of the Pyrenees, you realize they were just a prelude. Terreltes, the white hell of the Alps, is still waiting for you. You've left the Pyrenees behind you, but the march through southern Gaul is no victory parade. It's a tense, watchful journey through the territory of tribes who are, to put it mildly, not rolling out the welcome mat. Some are bribed into letting you pass. Others are intimidated. A few have to be fought. It's a constant, draining exercise in logistics and diplomacy with sword point. And then you see it, the Rain River. It's not just a river. It's a vast, powerful, fast-flowing barrier of greenish-blue water, far wider and more aggressive than any you've had to cross before. It carves its way through the landscape with an authority that makes your army, as immense as it is, feel suddenly very small. As if the river itself isn't enough of a problem. On the far bank, you see them. An army of the local Volca Gauls has gathered, shouting insults, waving their weapons, and making it crystal clear that this is the end of the line. Your first thought is that you're trapped, a hostile army in front of you. A giant river at your back, and miles of unfriendly territory behind you. But Hannibal doesn't see a trap, he sees a puzzle. For a couple of days, you simply make camp. He has you ostentatiously gathering boats from local villages, paying for some, commandeering others. It looks like you're preparing for a full frontal river assault, a move that would be suicidal. The Gauls on the other side mock you, confident in their position. But it's all a distraction. Under the cover of the second night, Hannibal dispatches a small, elite force under his nephew Hanno. They march upstream, cross the river at a quieter spot, and circle around behind the Gaulish army. Your job is to wait. You sit by the campfire, sharpening your sword, trying to ignore the nervous knot in your stomach, waiting for the signal. The signal comes at dawn. A thin column of smoke rising from behind the enemy camp. Hanno is in position. What happens next is a blur of controlled chaos. At Hannibal's command, you and the main army begin your crossing. You push your canoes and rafts into the churning water, paddling furiously, shouting your war cries. The Gauls, seeing you coming, rush to the riverbank to meet you, screaming their own defiance. They're so focused on the threat in front of them that they don't notice the flames erupting in their own camp behind them until it's too late. Hanno's force crashes into their rear. Panic rips through the Gaulish ranks. They are caught between a river full of angry invaders and an attack from behind. Their defensive line dissolves into a desperate scramble for survival. The battle is short, brutal, and decisive. Now, for the hard part, the horses were swum across, and the men have paddled. But the elephants are another matter entirely. They approach the water's edge, feel the tug of the current, and immediately panic. An elephant's instinct tells it that fast-moving water is a death trap. They refuse to budge, their deep rumbles of anxiety echoing across the river. So Hannibal, the master of puzzles, devises a solution of pure, beautiful deception. He orders the construction of enormous rafts, lashing them together and securing them to the riverbank. Then, he has you cover the rafts with a thick layer of earth, dirt, and sod, planting grass and bushes, until the pier looks like a natural, solid extension of the riverbank. Historians still argue about the exact location of this crossing, a debate that has raged for centuries as people try to trace his precise path to the Alps. With the stage set, the Mahodsta elephant drivers are. Given their instructions, they gently coax two female elephants, who are known to be calmer, onto the earthen pier. The big males, seeing the females walk ahead without issue, cautiously follow. Once the beasts are crowded onto the main raft at the end of the pier, the mooring ropes are cut. The trick is revealed. The raft lurches into the current, and the elephants realize they are no longer on solid ground. All hell breaks loose. The trumpeting is a sound of pure terror. Some elephants panic so badly they fall into the river. A few, remarkably, make it to the far shore by simply walking on the riverbed, using their long trunks as a kind of organic snorkel to breathe. Most, however, are skillfully managed by their mahouts, who calm them, stroke them, and somehow guide the floating menagerie to the other side. You watch from the bank, half in terror and half in awe. It is the most absurd and brilliant feat of engineering you have ever witnessed. Your army is across the Rain, the last great natural barrier before the mountains has been conquered. The relief you feel after getting the elephants across. The Rain is short. Your column pushes inland, moving away from the river, and with every step, the world begins to change. The ground starts to tilt upwards, almost imperceptibly at first, then with a stubborn, leg-burning insistence. The air, which had been thick and humid near the river, becomes thin and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and cold stone. And then you see them looming in the distance, the Alps. They're not the friendly, rolling mountains you might have imagined. They're a jagged, brutal wall of gray rock and white snow, a line of angry teeth scraping the bottom of the sky. They look less like a part of the world and more like the end of it. The casual confidence you felt in the lowlands evaporates, replaced by a quiet, collective awe that is mostly just a thin mask for fear. As you enter the foothills, you enter the lands of the Alubrages, a powerful confederation of Gallic tribes. They are not happy to see you. You represent an invading army of nearly 40,000 men, plus thousands of animals. Essentially a slow-moving city that needs to be fed. Think of it as the world's most demanding and heavily armed house guests showing up unannounced. For a few days, the Alubrages just watch. You see their scouts on the high ridges, little figures silhouetted against the sky. Their presence a constant, unnerving reminder that you are on their turf. They are letting you get deeper and deeper into their territory, letting the terrain itself become your prison. The path narrows, winding into a deep, shadowy gorge. The rock walls on either side climb so high they seem to blot out the sun, and the roar of a rushing river at the bottom of the ravine fills the air. It's the perfect place for an ambush, and the goals do not disappoint. The attack comes without warning. It's not a single, coordinated charge, but a terrifying, three-dimensional assault. War cries, guttural and inhuman, echo from the cliffs above. Then the world starts to come apart. Boulders, pried loose by Gallic warriors, come crashing down the slopes, smashing into the column with sickening force. Men and pack mules are swept away, their screams lost in the thunder of the rock. From hidden ledges, fighters you didn't even see hurl a storm of javelins and rocks down upon you. It's absolute chaos. You draw your sword, pressing your back against the rock face, trying to watch the cliffs and the path at the same time. You see the gulls themselves now, leaping down from lower ledges, big, fearsome men, many with their hair spiked up with lime wash to look like terrifying crests, a quirky fashion statement that is surprisingly effective when they're trying to kill you. The narrow path works against you, preventing you from forming a proper battle line. It's just a confused, desperate melee. The horses scream, and even some of the elephants, usually an unstoppable force, panic in the enclosed space. They're terrified, trumpeting adding to the din. They become as much of a danger to you as they are to the enemy. But Hannibal, as always, is one step ahead. He had anticipated this. Fearing exactly this kind of trap, he had led a force of his best light infantry on a forced march the night before, seizing the strategic heights that command the pass while the Gauls were still sleeping. Now, from even higher up the cliffs, your own troops begin to rain down missiles on the The Gauls, who thought they had the perfect trap, now find themselves trapped. The fight is still vicious and costs you dearly, but what could have been the annihilation of the army turns into a bloody, desperate victory. You eventually fight your way clear of the gorge, taking a Gallic town and securing enough food and supplies to replace what was lost. But the mood is grim. You've taken your first real punch in the mountains, and it hurt. You've lost men, valuable pack animals, and a large chunk of your supplies that now lie shattered at the bottom of the ravine. Historians still argue whether Hannibal was deliberately led into this trap by his local guides, who may have been playing a double game. Standing there, catching your breath, looking at the wounded being treated. You don't care about the academic debate. All you know is that the mountain has tasted your blood. A light, wet snow begins to fall, dusting your shoulders. It's only autumn, but up here, winter has already arrived. The white hell has welcomed you in. The light snow that dusted your shoulders after the ambush in the gorge was a gentle warning. Now, it is a constant companion. The climb has become a monotonous, soul-crushing routine. Every day, you wake up before the sun, your limbs stiff with a cold that seems to have seeped into your bones. You force down a meager ration of gritty, half-cooked grain, and you begin to walk. Up. Always up. The path is gone now, replaced by a treacherous track over scree and ice. Your leather sandals, so sturdy in the Spanish dust, are falling apart, and your feet are a raw, bleeding mess. The air is so thin it feels like you're breathing through a wet cloth. Every step is an effort. You see good men, hardened veterans you shared wine with just a few weeks ago, simply sit down by the side of the track, their eyes vacant, and refuse to go any further. You have to just keep walking. After a few days of this misery, you encounter a new group of mountain tribesmen. They approach, not with weapons drawn, but with open hands, offering garlands as a sign of peace. They bring you food, a welcome sight, and offer to guide you through the most difficult passes ahead. Hannibal is suspicious. He's been burned once before. He accepts their supplies but arranges his column with extreme caution. The precious elephants and the cavalry are placed at the front, while you and the most reliable infantry form the rear guard. It's a move that saves the army. For a couple of days, the guides are true to their word, and a fragile sense of hope begins to return. Then, as you are navigating another treacherous, narrow cliffside path with a sheer drop on one side, the trap is sprung. The friendly guides were, of course, not friendly at all. The attack is a repeat of the first ambush, but worse. Boulders rain down again, but this time the path is narrower, the drop more terrifying. The real attack, however, is focused on your position in the rear. The ghouls swarm you, trying to isolate and destroy the backbone of the army. You are fighting for your life on a ledge no wider than a cart, the abyss yawning beside you. The pack animals, struck by rocks or simply terrified, lose their footing and plunge into the void, taking your desperately needed food supplies with them. It's a chaotic, swirling nightmare of close-quarters combat where a single misstep means death. It's the elephants, of all things, that prevent total annihilation. The ghouls higher up the path try to attack the head of the column, but are so terrified of the strange, giant beasts that they dare not approach, allowing the vanguard to secure the path ahead. After a night of brutal fighting, you finally drive them off, but the cost is immense. 9 days after you enter the mountains, you finally reach the top. You drag yourself over the final rise, expecting something. A sense of achievement, maybe relief. Instead, what you find is a vision of absolute desolation. You are on the roof of the world, a vast, wind-scoured plateau of frozen rock and snow. There is no shelter. The wind is a physical force, a relentless, shrieking predator that sucks the warmth from your body and tears at your cloak. There is nothing to eat. There is no wood for fires. Historians still argue about the exact pass Hannibal took, with scholars championing different routes for centuries. But for you, standing here, all that matters is that it feels like the most hostile place in existence. For 2 days, you are stranded in this frozen hell while you wait for stragglers to catch up. The mood is one of profound, silent despair. The great army that left Spain is a shadow of its former self, a collection of gaunt, frostbitten survivors. The horses that are left are weak and starving. The elephants, tropical animals utterly unsuited for this environment, are suffering terribly. Their great boat is shivering, their cries thin and mournful in the biting wind. You look around at the endless sea of white peaks surrounding you and feel a hopelessness so complete it's almost peaceful. You have not been defeated by an enemy army, but by the mountain itself. Just when it seems all is lost, Hannibal calls the men together. He walks to the edge of the plateau, to a spot where the sky is clear. And far below, hazy and impossibly distant, you can just make out a different landscape. A land of green and gold. The plains of Italy. You are not only crossing the walls of Italy, he shouts, his voice raw but powerful over the wind, but of Rome itself. The rest of the journey will be smooth and downhill. It's a lie, of course, but standing there, shivering and starving, it is the most beautiful lie you have ever heard. Hannibal's words are still warming you against the wind. That vision of sunny Italian plains, a desperate hope clutched in your frozen fingers. His promise that the rest of the journey will be smooth and downhill is the single greatest piece of news you'll be ever heard. And for the first few steps of the descent, you almost believe him. It turns out, however, that downhill is not a synonym for easy. In fact, you're about to learn that it is a synonym for catastrophically lethally difficult. The climb was a battle against exhaustion and ambush. The descent is a battle against gravity, and gravity is undefeated. The problem is the ice. The northern face of the Alps, the one you climbed, heads less sun, so it was covered in a layer of packed snow that offered at least some traction. The southern face, the one you are now on, gets just enough afternoon sun to melt the top layer of snow, which then refreezes overnight into a solid, clear sheet of ice. The narrow track you're supposed to follow is now a polished, frictionless nightmare. You see men take a single, careless step and simply vanish. They slide, first, slowly, then with terrifying speed, scrabbling for a handhold that isn't there, their screams swallowed by the immense silence of the mountains before they are launched into the abyss. The horses are even worse off. Their hooves can find no purchase, and they slip and panic, sometimes breaking their legs, sometimes tumbling into the chasm, taking other men and precious supplies with them. It becomes a horrific, high-stakes, luge competition where everyone loses. You learn to move with a painful, shuffling slowness, testing every inch of ground before committing your weight. And then, you round a corner and the entire column grinds to a halt. A collective groan of utter despair ripples through the ranks. The path is gone. A recent landslide, a common occurrence in these volatile mountains, has sheared away a section of the track nearly 1,000 feet long. Before you is just a steep, icy cliff face leading down to the impassable section, and then nothing. You are well and truly stuck. This, you think, is the end. There is no way forward, and it is impossible to go back. But Hannibal does not know the meaning of the word impossible. He doesn't rage or despair. He simply surveys the problem, his engineer's mind clicking away. The decision is made. If the mountain will not give you a path, you will build one. What follows is the world's worst and coldest construction project. Hannibal sets up a camp on the most stable patch of ground he can find and directs you and the other soldiers, the ones healthy enough to work, to begin carving a new road out of the side of the mountain. You work in shifts, your hands raw and bleeding, chipping away at the frozen earth and rock with your swords and makeshift tools. Your progress is agonizingly slow until you come up against a massive rock outcropping that blocks all further progress. You can't go around it. You can't go over it. You have to go through it. And this is where you witness a feat of ingenuity that you will tell stories about for the rest of your life. Hannibal orders the men to fell what few stunted trees are nearby and build an immense bonfire against the face of the rock. The fire rages for hours, heating the stone to an incredible temperature. Then comes the quirky part. He has you bring forward large skins filled with the army's sour winder, cheap vinegar-like stuff you drink every day. On his command, the steaming, pungent wine is splashed onto the superheated rock. The result is dramatic. With a deafening crackle and hiss, the rock fractures from the thermal shock. You and your comrades are then able to break it apart with your tools and clear the path. Historians still argue whether this famous story is literally true, with many modern scholars questioning if sour wine could really shatter a giant boulder. But you saw it with your own eyes. It takes a full day to make the path just wide enough for the horses and mules to pass. It takes another 3 excruciating days, widening and reinforcing the precarious ledge, before it is safe enough for the elephants. The great beasts, now gaunt and half-starved, pick their way delicately across the man-made scar on the mountain. Finally, you are through. You descend below the snow line, and the first sight of green grass and trees feels like a miracle. You have made it. But as you look back at the ragged column of survivors limping into the Italian foothills, you see the true cost. The army that conquered the Alps is a ghost, a mere fraction of the mighty force that left Spain. You have survived the white hell, but it has carved a piece out of every one of you. You stumble out of the foothills and onto the flat plains of northern Italy, and the sensation is so strange you almost fall over. For weeks, every muscle in your body has been conditioned to the strain of climbing up or the jarring shock of sliding down. To walk on level ground feels like a luxury, a forgotten dream. The world is suddenly green and gold, just as Hannibal promised. The air is thick and warm, and you can smell damp earth and living things, a welcome replacement for the sterile scent of rock and ice. But the paradise is a cruel illusion. You and the men around you are not an army. You are a procession of skeletons. Your skin is stretched tight over your bones. Your eyes are sunk deep into their sockets. And your body is a roadmap of frostbite, sores, and unhealed wounds. The horses are in even worse shape, and the surviving elephants look like gray ghosts, their hides hanging loose on their emaciated frames. Your first priority is not war. It is survival. Hannibal finds a place to make camp, a place with grass for the animals, and running water for the men. And for a few glorious days, you do nothing but eat and sleep. The feeling of a full belly is so novel, it's almost painful. You watch the horses and elephants gorge themselves on fresh fodder, slowly regaining their strength. It is during this time that you witness Hannibal the Motivator in his prime. He knows that physical recovery is only half the battle. He needs to reignite the fighting spirit that the mountains tried to extinguish. He assembles the army. In the center of the gathering, he brings out a group of the wretched mountain tribesmen you captured on the descent. They are chained, starving, and miserable. Then, he lays out a set of fine Gallic armor, swords, and horses. He tells the prisoners that any of them who are willing to fight each other to the death can do so. The winner will get the armor, the horse, and his freedom. The desperate men fight with a savage intensity, and you watch, transfixed, as one finally emerges victorious. Hannibal then turns to you, his own men. He tells you that you are looking at a mirror of your own situation. You are trapped in a foreign land, with no hope of retreat. You must conquer or die, he says, his voice ringing with a cold, hard clarity. Before you lies the wealth of the Roman Republic. Behind you, the impassable wall of the Alps. Like the Gallic prisoners, you have been offered a great prize, and the alternative is oblivion. It's a brutal but effective piece of theater. You feel the last of the mountain's despair burn away, replaced by the familiar, hot certainty of the soldier. Meanwhile, the Romans are in a state of shock. They knew you were coming, but they never believed you would make it over the mountains. The consul, Publius Cornelius Scipio, who had been waiting for you in southern Gaul, has realized his mistake and made a frantic dash back to Italy. He has crossed the Po River and is moving to intercept you. The moment for rest is over. Hannibal leads his cavalry, including you and your squadron of elite Numidians, on a reconnaissance mission. On the other side of the Ticinus River, a small tributary of the Po, Scipio is doing the exact same thing with his own cavalry and light infantry. The two groups spot each other across the flat, open plain. There is no elaborate plan, no grand strategy. It's a sudden, instinctive clash of two scouting parties. Scipio's force is a mix of Roman horsemen and javelin throwers. You Numidians are something else. Entirely, you ride without saddles or bridles, guiding your swift, agile ponies with your legs and a simple rope around their neck. It's a quirky and incredibly effective style of fighting that the Romans have never seen before. As the Romans charge in their typical head-on fashion, you don't meet them. You feign a retreat, drawing them in, and then suddenly wheel around their flanks, peppering them with javelins from all sides. They are confused, unable to pin you down. While the Roman center is occupied with this swirling dance of death, Hannibal leads the heavier Spanish and Gallic cavalry in a decisive charge straight into their front. The Roman formation shatters. In the chaos, you see the consul, Scipio, go down, seriously wounded. He is saved only by the quick, courageous action of his teenage son, who charges into the melee and drags his father to safety. Historians still argue about the exact size of the forces involved, but the result is undeniable. The Roman cavalry breaks and flees. It's not a major battle, but it is a major victory. You have met the Romans on their soil, and they have run from you. That night, Gallic tribes who had been cautiously watching from the sidelines begin to arrive at your camp, offering men and supplies. The small victory at the Ticinus has sent a powerful message. Hannibal has arrived, and he is here to win. The victory at the Ticinus, small as it was, has an electrifying effect. You can feel the change in the air. The local Gallic tribes, who were sitting on the fence, now see Hannibal as a winner and a liberator from their Roman overlords. They flock to your banner, bring in thousands of new, if somewhat undisciplined, recruits, and, more importantly, food. The wounded Roman consul Scipio knows he's outmatched for now. He makes a strategic retreat, pulling his forces back across the Trebia River, breaking the bridges, and fortifying his camp to wait for reinforcements. Hannibal, never one to let an enemy rest, follows, and soon the two armies are staring at each other across the cold, fast-flowing water of the Trebia. The standoff doesn't last long. The Roman Senate, never known for its patience, has sent the other consul, Tiberius Sempronos Longus, racing up from the south. Longus is the polar opposite of the Cossus Scipio. He is arrogant, ambitious, and itching for a fight. His term as consul is about to expire, and he desperately wants a glorious victory to cap off his year in office. He combines his fresh army with Scipio's battered legions, and immediately begins to radiate a foolish confidence. Scipio, still recovering from his wound, advises caution. Longus sees this as the weakness of a defeated man. You can almost see Hannibal tasting the Roman arrogance in the air, analyzing it, and designing the perfect trap to exploit it. He has his opponent's psychological profile, and he's about to use it like a key in a lock. One bitterly cold morning in late December, the plan is set in motion. In the dead of night, Hannibal awakens his younger brother Mago, a fiery and capable commander in his own right. He gives him command of a hand-picked force. 2,000 men, a mix of infantry and cavalry, the best of the best. And you are one of them. You are led in the darkness, not toward the Roman camp, but to a concealed spot you had previously scouted. A winding, overgrown creek bed with high banks, a place completely hidden from view. You slip down into the icy water, which comes up to your knees, and crouch among the thorny bushes and tangled reeds. The cold is immediate and shocking. It bites at your skin and sinks deep into your bones. Your job is to wait here, in absolute silence, until you hear the signal. Shivering in the pre-dawn gloom, you feel less like a soldier and more like a predator hiding in a ditch. As the first gray light of dawn breaks, Hannibal springs the rest of the trap. He sends your old friends, the Numidian cavalry, screaming across the river to harass the Roman sentries and shoot javelins into their camp. It's the perfect provocation. Longus, just as Hannibal predicted, is enraged. Without even letting his men eat breakfast, he orders his entire army to form up and give chase. This is his moment for glory. He sends them pouring out of their camp, straight into the river. You, hiding in your ditch, can hear the distant roar of the Roman army on the move. Imagine the scene. 40,000 Romans, sleepy, hungry, and now soaking wet, wading through the chest-deep, freezing water of the Trebia to attack an army that is waiting for them, well-fed and dry. On the other side, it's less a battle plan and more of a temper tantrum. As they emerge on your side of the river, their limbs numb with cold, Hannibal's main army is perfectly arrayed to meet them. The battle is joined, and it is a brutal, grinding affair. The Roman legions in the center are incredibly tough. Even cold and starving, they are some of the best heavy infantry in the world, and they begin to push back your Gallic allies in the center. But that's all part of the plan. Onto flanks your veteran cavalry, and the remaining elephants smash into the Roman wings, folding them inward. Just as the battle reaches its peak intensity, just as the Roman legionaries think they are about to break through your center, Hannibal gives the signal. A horn blast, sharp and clear, cuts through the din. That is your cue. You and Mago's 2,000 men erupt from your hiding place, screaming like madmen, and crash into the rear of the Roman line. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. The legions, already engaged to their front and flanks, have no reserve, no defense. For an attack from behind, panic, the soldiers' most contagious disease, rips through their ranks. Their orderly formations dissolve into a terrified mob. They are completely encircled. Historians still argue about the precise number of casualties, but it was a slaughter. A small, disciplined portion of the Roman center, about 10,000 men, manages to punch their way through your lines and escape. But the rest of the army is annihilated, cut down, drowned in the river, or captured. You lost many of the Gauls, and, tragically, almost all of the remaining elephants, who could not survive the brutal cold and the wounds of battle. But it is a stunning victory. You have now destroyed an entire Roman consular army. You are no longer just a nuisance. You are a nightmare walking on Italian soil. The victory at Trebia warms you through the brutal winter that follows. You are quartered amongst your new Gallic allies. But it's an uneasy cohabitation. The Gauls are fickle, and you get the sense that their hospitality is directly proportional to your recent success. Sickness sweeps through the camp, and the cold is a constant, miserably enemy. It is during this bleak period that Hannibal himself suffers a terrible affliction. A relentless infection, probably ophthalmia, attacks his right eye. The pain is agonizing, and without proper physicians, the eye is lost. He will now view the world and his enemies with a single calculating eye, a feature that only adds to his intimidating aura. When spring finally thaws the land, you are on the move again, heading south, leaving the exhausted lands of the Po Valley behind you. Your destination is the heart of Italy. There you must cross another mountain range. It's not the Alps, but it's a miserable journey all the same. Then you descend into a region that is, in many ways, worse than the highest mountain pass, the marshes of the Arno River. For 4 days and 3 nights, you march through a nightmarish, flooded landscape. The water is everywhere, a stinking, stagnant soup of mud and decay. There is no dry place to rest. You sleep, if you can call it that, on your feet or slumped over the bodies of pack animals that have drowned in the muck. The stench is overpowering. Insects swarm you, and disease runs rampant. This is where you lose the last of the elephants, Surus, the great beast that had reputedly carried Hannibal himself. The animal, like so many men, finally succumbs to the exhaustion and filth. The crossing of the Arno is a filter of misery, weeding out the last of the weak. When you finally emerge onto solid, dry ground, you are a leaner, harder, and more desperate fighting force than ever. Rome, in the meantime, has not been idle. Panicked by the defeat at Trebia, they've raised new legions and elected new consuls. One of them is named Gaius Flaminius. He is, much like Longus before him, a man driven by political ambition and a supreme, almost suicidal, self-confidence. He is a new man in Roman politics, a populist who despises the old aristocratic families, and he's eager to win a spectacular victory to cement his own power. He positions his army at Aretum, blocking the most direct route to Rome. But Hannibal, as you know by now, never takes the direct route. He bypasses Flaminius's army, marching through the difficult marshlands precisely because a conventional general would deem them impassable. You don't just march past, you engage in a campaign of calculated destruction, burning and pillaging the rich countryside of Etruria right under his nose. It's a deliberate, personal insult. You are torching the property of Rome's wealthiest citizens, and Flaminius, the people's champion, is doing nothing. Hannibal is baiting the hook, and he knows his man will bite. Flaminius, goaded beyond endurance and against the advice of his senior officers, abandons his strong defensive position and gives chase. This is exactly what Hannibal wanted. He leads the Romans on, pulling them further and further from their supply lines, until he finds the perfect location. Lake Trasimene. It is a masterpiece of tactical geography. The road runs along the northern edge of the lake, squeezed into a narrow plain. On the other side of the road, a line of steep, wooded hills rises up, perfectly enclosing the path. It is a natural corridor, a kill box several miles long. That night, you move into position. It is a strange, silent deployment. Hannibal places his best heavy infantry at the far end of the pass to block the exit. Then, he has you and the rest of the army, the Gauls, the Spanish, the light infantry, the cavalry climb the hills, and conceal yourselves in the forests. Overlooking the road, historians still debate the exact deployment, whether you were in one long line or in staggered groups. But from your hiding spot among the trees, all you know is that you can see the entire length of the narrow road below. You lie there all night, a silent, unseen army of thousands, holding your breath, waiting for the dawn. And when the dawn comes, It brings a gift from the gods of war. A thick, heavy fog rolls off the lake, blanketing the entire plain in an impenetrable white shroud. The hills where you are hiding, however, remain in the clear morning light. You can see them, but they cannot see you. You hear the Roman army before you see them. The tramp of thousands of feet, the jingle of equipment, the shouts of centurions. The head of their column enters the defile, completely oblivious. They march for hours, their entire army stretching out along the lakeside road, blind in the fog. And then the signal comes. A trumpet blast from Hannibal's position echoes across the hills, and you descend. It is not a battle. It is a slaughter. You crash down the slopes into the flank of the unsuspecting Roman column. They have no time to form a line, no time to even turn and face you. Men are cut down while still in marching order. You are a specter emerging from the mist, a blade in the fog. The Roman left is pinned against the lake, the right against the hills where your comrades are pouring down. Their front is blocked by Hannibal's infantry, and their rear is sealed by your cavalry. They are trapped. The 3-hour massacre turns the waters of the lake red. Gaius Flaminius is cut down, his glorious ambitions ending in the mud. By the time the fog finally burns off, an entire Roman army, for the second time in 6 months, has been utterly annihilated. The scale of your victory at Lake Trasimene is difficult to comprehend. 3 Roman legions have been wiped from the face of the earth. The road to Rome itself lies open. A wave of euphoria, mixed with a grim sense of invincibility, sweeps through the army. You are no longer just an invading force. You are a divine scourge, an unstoppable tide of vengeance. You march south, expecting at any moment to see the terrified armies of Rome scrambling to defend their capital. But Hannibal doesn't march on the city. He knows you don't have the siege equipment or the numbers to take on its formidable walls. Instead, he veers east toward the Adriatic coast, giving his army a chance to rest and recover, re-equipping you with the captured arms of the legions you have just destroyed. It's a pragmatic, if slightly anticlimactic, move. Back in Rome, the news of Trasimene has landed like a physical blow, stripping away the last vestiges of Roman arrogance. The city is in a state of pure, undiluted panic. In a crisis of this magnitude, they resort to an ancient emergency measure. They appoint a dictator, a single man given absolute authority for 6 months to save the state. And the man they choose is the complete opposite of the rash, glory-seeking consuls you have so easily dispatched. His name is Quintus Fabius. Maximus, he is old, experienced, and profoundly cautious. He has watched you outwit and annihilate to Roman armies, and he has no intention of becoming the third. He understands that Hannibal is a tactical genius, unlike any the Romans have ever faced. And so, he decides to change the rules of the game. He is not going to play. Fabius marches his new army out to meet you, and you prepare for the next great battle. But the battle never comes. You march through the rich farmlands of central Italy, and Fabius's legions follow, always at a safe distance. You see them shadowing you, a constant presence on the hills, their campfires twinkling in the night. But they never offer battle. You try to provoke them. You burn entire harvests in the fields, the smoke a black stain against the blue Italian sky. You sack towns that refuse to surrender, making a very public and brutal point. Nothing. Fabius just watches. It is the most infuriating and unnerving experience you have ever had. It's like trying to fight a ghost. His strategy is simple. Deny you a decisive battle, harass your foraging parties, and slowly, patiently, bleed you dry. In Rome, they mock him for it, giving him the insulting nickname Cunc Tetava. Diler, your frustration grows with every passing week of the hot Italian summer. You are a soldier of fortune, a warrior who thrives on the adrenaline of combat and the rewards of plunder taken in victory. This endless marching and waiting feels pointless. Eben cowardly, the goals in your ranks are especially restless, grumbling that they signed up for a war, not a tour of the Italian countryside. Historians still argue whether Fabius's strategy was a stroke of genius that saved Rome, or a display of cowardice that prolonged the agony and emboldened Hannibal's allies. From your perspective on the ground, it feels like a very effective form of torture. Then, for a moment, it looks like the old man has finally got you. Fabius manages to bottle you up in the Ager Falerness, a fertile valley in Campania. It's a perfect trap. Your army is enjoying the rich plunder of the valley, but Fabius has silently seized all the mountain passes leading out. You are surrounded, your escape route blocked by a strong Roman force. For the first time, a genuine sense of dread percolates through your camp, but you have underestimated Hannibal's boundless capacity for trickery. That night, he orders his men to round up 2,000 head of captured oxen. He then has you and your comrades fashion torches out of bundles of dry wood, which are tied to the horns of the cattle. Under the cover of complete darkness, the oxen are driven up the slopes of the hills near the main pass. At a signal, the torches are lit. The result is a bizarre and terrifying spectacle. A vast, moving river of lights bobs and weaves its way up the mountainside. The terrified cattle, their heads ablaze, run wild, creating a chaotic illusion of a massive army on the move, preparing a nighttime flanking attack. The Roman soldiers guarding the pass, seeing this inexplicable and frightening sight, do exactly what Hannibal predicted they would. Believing they are about to be outflanked, they abandon their prepared positions and rush up the mountain to intercept the enemy. While they are chasing phantoms, you and the rest of Hannibal's army slip quietly and cleanly through the now undefended pass. By the time the Romans realize they've been duped by a herd of cows, you are long gone. You have escaped the Delayer's trap, but his shadow still hangs over you. The war of attrition continues. Your clever escape from Fabius's trap, using the fiery oxen as a decoy, becomes a legend told around the campfires. But while it boosts your morale, it does the opposite in Rome. Fabius's 6-month term as dictator expires, and the Roman people have had enough of his delaying tactics. They see the Conctata strategy not as prudent, but as cowardly. The humiliation of having an enemy army wandering freely through Italy, burning and plundering at will, is too much to bear. They demand a final, decisive battle that will crush you once and for all. And so, they elect 2 new consuls and give them a mandate to seek and destroy. One is Gaius Terentius Varro, a populist, aggressive, and supremely confident man cut from the same cloth as Flaminius and Longus. The other is Lucius Aemilius Paulus, an experienced aristocrat who is cautious and wise, much like Fabius. The Roman political system, in a quirky and ultimately catastrophic decision, dictates that the 2 consuls will command the army on alternating days. To ensure this battle is the last one, Rome assembles the largest single army in its history, 8 full legions, along with allied troops, a force numbering somewhere close to 86,000 men. You watch them arrive, a seemingly endless river of steel and crimson cloaks, and for the first time, you feel a cold knot of genuine fear. Your Oin army, even with the Gallic allies, is barely 50,000 strong. You are outnumbered, out-equipped, and deep in enemy territory. Hannibal, however, shows no fear. He has been maneuvering for this moment. He leads you to a place called Cannae, a wide, flat, treeless plain near the Adriatic coast. It is a terrible place for Roman legions who thrive in broken terrain, but it is a perfect paradise for cavalry. Hannibal is not just accepting a battle, he's setting the stage for a masterpiece. On a hot morning in early August, the day of the battle arrives. It is Varro's turn to command, and he is eager for glory. The dust kicked up by over 130,000 men and thousands of horses creates a hazy, oppressive fog that hangs in the still air. The Romans formed their line, but not in their usual checkerboard pattern. Varro masseos them into a deep, dense rectangular, battering ram of flesh and steel designed to punch through the center of any opposition. Across the plain, you take your position, and you notice something strange about your own formation. Hannibal places his weakest troops, the Spanish and Gallic infantry, in the center. But he doesn't just line them up. He pushes them forward, creating a shallow crescent that bulges out toward the massive Roman block. It looks suicidally arrogant, a thin, weak curve, daring a sledgehammer to strike. Onto flanks, tucked back and almost hidden, are your elite African veterans, and on the far wings, the cavalry. The battle begins. The roar of the two armies crashing together is a physical force, a sound that shakes the very ground you stand on. The massive Roman center, just as Hannibal predicted, smashes into your weak crescent. The Gauls and the Spanish fight with desperate courage, but they are being crushed. The line begins to give way. You can feel the immense pressure, the sheer weight of the legions pushing you back. The crescent shape slowly, deliberately, inverts. It sags in the middle, bending backward like a bow being drawn. The Roman legionaries, sensing a breakthrough, surge forward, pressing deeper and deeper into the pocket, their flanks becoming dangerously exposed as they funnel into the trap. While this is happening, a storm has broken on the wings. Your superior Numidian and Spanish cavalry, led by a general named Hasdrubal, collides with the much weaker Roman cavalry. The fight is short and brutal. The Roman horsemen are shattered and driven from the field, but instead of pursuing them, Hasdrubal executes a brilliant, disciplined maneuver. He wheels his victorious squadrons around the back of the entire Roman army to attack the remaining cavalry on the other flank from behind. With that, the Roman cavalry's gone. The trap is now set. You feel the signal pass down the line as the Romans are packed shoulder to shoulder in the center of the pocket, so focused on the apparent collapse in front of them that they notice nothing else. The jaws of the trap snap shut. On both flanks, your elite African infantry, the hardened veterans who have been waiting patiently, pivot inward. They slam into the exposed sides of the Roman legions. At the same moment, Hasdrubal's cavalry crashes into their rear. Suddenly, the largest army Rome has ever fielded is completely, totally surrounded. What happens next is not a battle. It is an industrial process of killing. The Romans are packed so tightly they cannot even swing their swords. They can only stand and die as you and your comrades press in from every side. A relentless circle of death. The consul Paulus is struck down, fighting to the last. Varro, the arrogant fool who started it all, tucks his tail and flees with a few survivors. Historians still debate why Hannibal didn't march on Rome immediately after this apocalyptic victory. His cavalry commander Maharbel supposedly told him, "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use one." Looking out over the field of Cannae, a CO of over 50,000 dead and dying Romans, you wonder if he's right. You have delivered Rome its darkest day, but the war is still not over. Maharbal's words seem to hang in the oppressive, humid air over the field of Cannae, a silent accusation that drifts with the dust and the flies. You do not know how to use one. You expect the order to march on Rome, to end this war in one final, glorious push, but the order never comes. Hannibal knows your army, though victorious, is exhausted and in no shape to conduct a major siege. He believes that the sheer, catastrophic scale of the defeat will force the Roman Senate to the negotiating table. He sends an envoy to the city, fully expecting to discuss terms of surrender. The response that comes back is an act of pure, stubborn defiance that you can hardly believe. Rome refuses to negotiate. They refuse to ransom their thousands of prisoners. They pass a law forbidding public mourning, literally outlawing grief, and they begin the grim work of rebuilding. They enlist underage boys, by slaves, to turn into soldiers and armed criminals. They are a wounded beast, but they are choosing to fight, not bleed out. Your strategy, therefore, has to change. If you cannot take the head, you will tear away the limbs. You turn south, marching into the breadbasket of the Italian peninsula, the wealthy regions of Samnium, Lucania, and, most importantly, and here, you finally start to see the political fruits of your military victories. One by one, cities that have long chafed under Roman rule begin to open their gates to you. The great prize is Capua, the second largest and wealthiest city in all of Italy. When they renounce their allegiance to Rome and welcome you as liberators, it feels like a turning point as significant as any battle. This is how you will win, not by raising Rome, but by dismantling its empire. City by city, that winter, you are quartered in Capua, and it is a paradise you could not have imagined in your darkest, coldest moments in the Alps. For the first time in years, you sleep in a real bed, under a solid roof. You eat hot food, rich stews and freshly baked bread, served on plates instead of out of a leather pouch. You drink fine wine, not the sour vinegar you've been fermenting on the march. The city is a world of comfort, of warm baths and willing women. A soft, perfumed embrace that feels like a reward for all you have endured. But as the weeks of indulgence stretch into months, something begins to change. The iron discipline that was forged in the Spanish frontier and tempered in the alpine snows begins to rust. Remember that time you chewed on raw leather to survive? Now you find yourself complaining if your wine isn't the right temperature. The morning drills seem harsher, the call to arms more of an annoyance. Historians still argue whether the winter in Capua truly softened Hannibal's army, or if that's just a convenient excuse Roman writers later used to explain away their own repeated defeats. But you can feel it in your own bones. You are not as hard as you used to be. When spring comes and the campaigning season begins again, the army that marches out of Capua's gates is not quite the same one that marched in. The war now enters a new phase. It's no longer a series of epic, set-piece battles. The Romans, now led by men who have learned the hard lessons of Fabius, refuse to face you in the open field. They shadow you, they harass you, but they will not give you the decisive fight you crave. The war becomes a grueling, frustrating contest of sieges and counter-sieges. You march to relieve an allied city that the Romans have surrounded, and they simply melt away, only to appear and attack another ally 100 miles away. The years begin to blur together, a long, slow grind of marching and skirmishing under the hot Italian sun. 215 BC becomes 214, becomes 213. The face of the army changes. The veterans you crossed the mountains with, the men who swore the oath alongside you, are almost all gone. Their place is filled by unreliable Gallic mercenaries and Italian turncoats who lack the fanatical loyalty of the old guard. You are winning small victories, outsmarting Roman generals in minor engagements. But the strategic situation is slowly turning against you. For every man you lose, Rome raises 10 more. They are an ocean, and you are a rock, and the tide is relentless. In a desperate attempt to lift the Roman siege of your prized city, Capua, Hannibal finally makes a dramatic feint, marching all the way to the gates of Rome itself. But it is a bluff, and the Romans call it. They do not lift the siege. Capua falls and is brutally punished. You have shown you can outfight them, but they have shown they can outlast you. The taste of victory from Cannae has faded, replaced by the bitter ash of a war you can no longer win. The long, slow grind of the unwinnable war in Italy has worn you down to a nub. The news from the wider world, which trickles into your camp in fragments, is all bad. The most devastating blow comes from Spain, where Hannibal's brother had raised a new army and attempted to repeat the incredible march across the Alps to reinforce you. He made it to Italy, but was met by a Roman army at the Metaurus River and was utterly defeated. His severed head was thrown into your brother's camp, a message of brutal, final clarity. The dream is over, and then comes the news you have been dreading for years. A new Roman general, a young prodigy, has taken the war to your home. He has invaded Africa. His name is Publius Cornelius Scipio, and you remember him. He was the teenage boy who saved his father's life in that very first cavalry clash at the Ticinus River, all those lifetimes ago. He is not like the other Roman generals. He has spent years studying Hannibal's tactics, learning from his enemy. He doesn't just fight like a Roman, he fights like you. And now, he is at the gates of Carthage. The call comes, as you always knew it would. After 15 years of campaigning on Italian soil, you are being summoned home. The departure is a strange, hollow affair. You board the transport ships, leaving behind the land you dominated for so long but could never conquer. As the shores of Italy fade into the distance, you feel not the triumph of a returning hero, but the profound, weary bitterness of a mission failed. You land in Africa to a hero's welcome, but you know the situation is desperate. You have your remaining veterans from the Italian campaign, a corps of hardened, unbeatable warriors, but the rest of your new army is a hastily assembled levy of raw Carthaginian citizens and unreliable mercenaries. It's a patchwork force, a shadow of the glorious instrument you wielded at Cannae. You meet your opponent on the flat, dusty plains of Zama, Scipio is there, his legions drawn up, disciplined and confident, and he has a trump card. A huge force of Numidian cavalry, led by their king Massinissa, who has defected from Carthage and allied himself with Rome. Your greatest advantage, the superior cavalry you used to devastating effect in every major battle, is now gone. In fact, it's now fighting for the other side. Still, you have one last hope, 80 war elephants, a force far larger than the one you took over the Alps. They are your shock troops, the weapon you will use to smash the Roman lines and create the opening you need. The battle begins, the horns sound, and on your command, the great beasts charge. It is a terrifying sight, a thundering gray wall of muscle and ivory meant to create chaos and terror. But Scipio is ready. He has not arranged his legions in the usual solid block. Instead, he has organized them in columns, with wide, clear lanes running straight through his formation. As the elephants approach, the Roman skirmishers in the front ranks unleash a deafening blast from hundreds of trumpets and horns. The noise is horrifying, a coordinated sonic assault designed for maximum panic. The elephants, many of whom are not fully trained, are terrified. Some stop dead in their tracks. Others are channeled harmlessly down the lanes Scipio so cleverly created, where they are pelted with javelins until they emerge, wounded and confused, out the back of the Roman army. But the worst happens on the wings. Dozens of the panicked beasts, in a frenzy of fear, turn around. They pivot and stampede not towards the enemy, but back into your own lines. They crash into your cavalry squadrons, gutting horses, trampling men, and turning your entire flank into a scene of bloody chaos before the battle has even properly begun. Historians still argue whether Scipio's noise tactic was the primary cause, or if the elephants were simply too poorly trained to ever be effective, but the result is the same. Your secret weapon has just gutted your own army. The main infantry lines crash together, and your veterans in the center fight with the superhuman courage you expect of them. They hold the Roman legions to a standstill, but it's not enough. Your disorganized cavalry is swept from the field by Scipio's superior horsemen. The raw recruits on your flanks crumble. The battle hangs in a bloody stalemate for what feels like an eternity, until you hear a thunder of hooves from behind you. Scipio's cavalry, having routed your own, has returned. They smash into your rear. You have been caught in a reverse canoe. You, the master of encirclement, are now the one being encircled. The vow made by a 9-year-old boy in a temple, a promise that ignited a war and shook the foundations of the world, ends here, in the dust of Zama, with the taste of your own tactics turned against you. Your army is destroyed. The war is lost. The sounds of the battle finally begin to fade, replaced by a deep and hollow ringing in your ears. The frantic energy, the desperate hope that has propelled you across mountains and through frozen rivers for all these years, finally drains away, leaving only the profound, bone-deep exhaustion of a journey that has reached its bitter end. You are no longer a soldier in a grand army, but just a solitary figure adrift in the quiet aftermath of a fallen dream. The sun begins to set, casting long, peaceful shadows across the land, and the world seems to be settling into a gentle stillness, utterly indifferent to the history that was just so violently concluded. There is no more marching to be done, no more rivers to cross, no more enemies waiting in the fog. There is only the soft whisper of the wind and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. A simple, quiet anchor in the vast silence. Let the weight of the shield slip from your arm, and let the grip on your sword finally go slack. Your watch is over. Allow the quiet to envelop you, to soothe the weariness from your limbs and calm the echoes in your mind. Who's rests now, and let the story gently fade into the peaceful darkness that waits for you at the edge of sleep. Sweet dreams.